Hey class, it's me again. Sorry it took me a little while to get this video up and running. I decided to do a Halloween theme. Halloween is such a terrific holiday, and I know a lot of you, based on the questions that I have been getting, are somewhat frightened of this literary analysis. So I wanted to go over some main points that I think will help you in writing this paper. There are several tips that you can follow that will help you. Just like if you were writing a research paper on stem cell research or on the death penalty. With an analysis of literature, you're still making an argument. You're looking at something to prove. You know, you're comparing the similarities between two characters. You're comparing two themes in a story. You're talking about setting. And so that's why I had referenced that you look at the literary terms PowerPoint. Again, it's not required that you do that, but I think that that would help you in kind of getting some ideas moving forward with this paper. One of the first steps is to consider is about your thesis, and I've had lots of questions about this. How can a thesis for a short story analysis or a literary analysis be an argument? It can be an argument. You're proving a point about your story. It should be an argument. It should be something that can be proven. Let me give you an example. If we were talking about Hamlet, Shakespeare's famous tragedy, you want to have a strong argument there. So you wouldn't say something like, Shakespeare's Hamlet is a play about a young man who seeks revenge. That's obvious. I know that. That's plot summary. That's Spark Notes, Cliff Notes, Pink Monkey Notes, all of that. We know that. You want to have an argument, okay? Another example is, that's a much better, I should say, is Hamlet experiences internal conflict because he is in love with his mother. That is debatable. It's controversial. It is something that you could argue in the rest of the paper. So again, Hamlet experiences internal conflict because he is in love with his mother. The rest of the paper could then show specific examples from the text and evidence from scholars about how Hamlet is in love with his mother, why he's in love with her, and what implications there are for reading that in the rest of the play. Here's another example with my menacing-looking pumpkin. This is a little hard to see, so I'll read this. This is another example from Moby Dick, Herman Melville's epic story. Some of the first ones aren't that great. Moby Dick is about the problem of evil. That's very vague, very general, okay, not very specific. The second one, Moby Dick is boring and pointless. That's not an argument. That's your opinion. Now, you can incorporate your opinion a little bit in the story, but this is not a book review. I do want to be very clear about that. It is not a book review about, I loved it, I hated it, I thought it was great. It's an argument, okay? The third one, also not very good. Moby Dick is about a big white whale. That's obvious, okay? That's obvious if you've read Moby Dick or even if you've looked at the cover of the book, okay? So that's not an argument. The last one is much better. It says, the use of whiteness in Moby Dick illustrates the uncertainty about the meaning of life that Ishmael expresses throughout the novel. So then all of your subpoints can be how whiteness is used on different levels, okay, to express the meaning of life. So you really want something that is specific, that's not general, that's not obvious, and that passes what I always call is the so what factor. Now, this one, I apologize, is a little hard to see. This is something that I wrote several years ago about James Joyce's Ulysses, another very famous 20th century literary text, very famous. And I'm going to read the thesis, which again, your thesis, for our purposes, should be the last sentence of your first paragraph. So in a similar fashion to Gertie McDowell, Molly Bloom's yearning for male acceptance and subsequent adherence to the social conventions of her society is spurred by her problematic childhood. That is a good thesis. In that paper, what I did was I first talked about Gertie McDowell, another female character in the story. Okay, and then I compared her to Molly Bloom, another character in the story as well. I talked about how they both seek male acceptance and the societal conventions of their time, and how those relate to their problematic childhoods. Okay, so you really want to, be specific in your thesis about, the direction you're going in your paper, and in the paper prove those points. This is yet another example from Homer's famous work, The Odyssey. This is a really nice version of a first paragraph. I'll let you, kind of look over it. It's to the point, it's specific, okay? And then you notice in the thesis, again, that last sentence of the first paragraph, it is going to examine or compare the two queens, okay? So that will be, that comparison will be the bulk of the paper. And so it looks like it will talk about different characteristics of Helen of Troy and then the other queen. So again, kind of look over this. This is another good example. Okay, so we talked about your introduction and having a strong thesis as the first step. Step 2 would be you need evidence. It's just like if you are a lawyer going into a courtroom, you can't just say my client is innocent without providing proof, okay? The same thing with an analysis like this. A paper like this, you need evidence. You need evidence from the text. You need in-text citations, paraphrasing, specifics from the text that prove your point, okay? Quotes, examples, details. Remember to cite those correctly, though, in MLA format. Remember to do that. As I talked about in the video last week, you also need strong secondary sources. I believe you're required to use 2 outside sources. This should be from scholars in the field. Again, look on EBSCOhost, InfoTrack. Look on your institution's online databases to get some ideas, and incorporate something that those authors are saying that substantiates your point, okay, that furthers your argument. You're using them to further your argument, okay? So it's very important to do that. So make sure you do that. Again, Wikipedia, as I said last week, is not an appropriate source for this type of academic paper. Okay, so this is an example from another paper of just some ways to really incorporate some quotations from the story in text and any other sources. As you look here, what I have in the box, as Marilyn French would argue, Susan is an in-law woman. This is from a Virginia Woolf novel. Marilyn French is a scholar, so I was incorporating what she was saying. And then it goes on, it says she is a nurturer who has become defined by her role as a mother. Sex, arguably for her, centers on reproductive efforts. Bernard, who is another character in the story, claims she is, quote, holy woman, purely feminine, who was, quote, born to be adorned by poets. While Susan clearly relishes in her role as mother and caretaker, she is, quote, unsatisfied for something that has escaped me. So I'm really digging into the text here, and that's what I want you to do with your paper. I really need to see, that you are having those in-text citations from the story. You also need a really strong organizational structure. Your points should build off each other. Why are you talking about what point at what time? You should really start with your weakest point and go to your strongest point. Okay, definitely end with a strength, but really think about, really think that you are a lawyer in a courtroom and you are trying to prove a point, and you have, you're trying to say my client is innocent, and these are the 3 or 4 points I'm going to use to prove that. So point 1 should be your first paragraph with the transition sentence, then point 2, then point 3, and lastly point 4. Okay, and then lastly, we've talked about this when we reviewed the writing process, but lastly, you really need to develop a strong conclusion. I saw several students with their first paper who they tied their conclusion with their introduction strategy or the title of their paper. That is absolutely excellent. Please continue to do that. Conclude with a strength. Your conclusion should be a separate paragraph. It should be the last paragraph of the essay. Okay, so I hope this has helped a little bit. I think some people are intimidated by literature. I do not want you to be that way. You are going to have to write or have written analysis papers in a lot of other disciplines. This is no different. You're still picking out a point and you're arguing it. Remember, it should not be something that's a fact. Okay, it should not be, if you're doing A Good Man is Hard to Find, it should not be A Good Man is Hard to Find is a story by Flannery O'Connor. That's a fact. Remember, a thesis is something that is disputable. Okay, and again, it's not your opinion, it is an argument. So I hope this helped a bit. Again, I apologize for my delay in getting this online, but I definitely hope this helped. And as I said in my email today, it's Thursday. If you have not sent your first two paragraphs to me, please do that as soon as possible. So thank you so much, and you'll hear from me next week.